anti-human aspect to a lot of. One point I want to make, just if anyone's listening to this, I'm not hating on all vegans. I actually know a few vegans I like, and they're very.
We're talking about ideas here, right?
Yeah,
like we're not talking
about the cultural
not an ad hominem, even on the scale of like groups. Like we're just trying to talk about the flaw of this method of thinking. So I don't think you need to even mention it. And if you do,
I do, man.
For anybody that would be watching
the messages I get daily now.
Yeah. I mean, it's very clear that we're not talking about, anything that has to do with people, specifically. We're talking about ideas here. That's what we attack, right?
The ideology.
The ideology, exactly. And that's what I'm trying to say is it's a backlash. It's like, okay, these things are bad for us, but they're not. Like they're necessary. It's just that we need to be able to regulate them. That's all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No. And I mean, it's part of like Phil Escott mentioned this. It's a lot of repression, and it has to do with the PC culture. It's rejecting all of the more toxic aspects of humanity, like masculinity, just impulsivity and stuff like that. I mean, I guess impulsivity isn't really a big target for it. It tends to be more superficial stuff. So like, don't kill the animals. But all to say, there's a lot of gurus out there who are big on like, you should stop reproducing. That like we need to reduce the human population because humanity is a scourge. As you said, yeah, it's part of that.
A lot of anti-human type sentimentality, kind of. Yeah, it's like it's subconscious, so they don't even realize they're doing it.
Yeah.
But I think at the same time there are parallels that you could draw between our two sort of methods of thinking, and it's like this. They associate like meat consumption as bad for you because it is bad for you if you're going to McDonald's every day. It's horrible meat. Yeah. It's horrible for you, right? You need to get. This is why you go to. You say, dude, if I come visit you, is there a good butcher there? I don't want. It's like you want good food. That's something we agree on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just that they take a little bit further. They say, well, it's not only bad for you, which to begin with, it's like they skip over and they miss the point that meat isn't bad for you. That meat is bad for you. And then they go further and they say, not only is it bad physically, but it's bad morally. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, yes, it is bad morally because you're going to McDonald's. Everything is bad with that meat. Yeah. Morally speaking, physically speaking, like it's bad for you. It's bad for the environment. It's bad for morality. It is. We agree on that. That's the fucking point. But then they turn around and they say, like they to defend their point. Once you do draw that parallel and you say, look, we agree. They say, yeah, no, but you still want to eat meat, and that's bad. It's like, okay, now make your case against why it's bad to eat meat. That's free trade or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean? Like that is healthy. That is all this stuff. And then they come up with bullshit studies that are not backed up and like literally just contradict the facts. That's how our system runs.
Yeah. I mean, I was in the same position. I think a lot of people think deep down that there's no such thing as objective truth. That's the animalistic side of things. So they end up, they latch onto an ideology and then they look for anything that agrees with them. And unfortunately, the idealistic, overly idealistic, naive perspectives in the world are getting catered to now. It's a whole industry to create studies and products to sell to the people who have the most naive and
I
don't know what to call it, but worldviews. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but and the way they do that is they appeal to the simplicity of these people. And when I don't mean that their minds are simple, that they're simple people. What I'm saying is that they're appealing to that sort of little feeling inside of like, I want a simple answer just to justify my ideology. Like, here's a great example. Oh, just look at human sort of like dentures, right? Like, look at what the teeth look like. We don't have canines like other animals.
Claws.
Therefore, we were not meant to like, you know, eat meat. And it's like, guys, like with the same. So here's how you can turn it over on them, right? It's like with the same simplicity. Think about it this way: we evolved a brain so that we could use tools, right? And you know, we have our hands as well. We're not like dogs. We don't need to rip meat apart. You know what I mean? But the whole reason that we might not have canines anymore is exactly that, because we've developed cooked meat, wherein you don't have to tear it apart direct. We don't eat. We've never, I don't think, you know, Homo erectus or whatever, even the prior species of apes that were close to us, um, like Cro-Magnon and you know, the other ones anyway. You know, like I don't think they ever ate live animals. Like, okay, I'm gonna hunt it down, and like just fucking rip it to shreds like a lion. No. As soon as we became bipeds, we started using our intellect and our hands so that we could capture the meat and eat it cooked or dead at the very least. Do you know what I mean? That's why we might not have canines. Like, anyway.
Look at most monkeys. By the way, all monkeys eat meat, but I get it. They eat more plants, but they all have massive canines.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this has nothing to do. Like, I just don't think it's a good argument, and it sucks that it appeals to their simplicity.
Yeah. Also, it's they. You can see in their argumentation. There's a lot of videos of vegans, like vegan activists, going up to people in the streets and, you know, debating with them. But it's mostly appeal to emotion, and they make it like, oh, you don't want to be cruel. What about the poor animals? They keep pushing the emotional side of it, and that's when you know that's where they're coming from. That's where their own how do I say it? Their own motivations lie. They don't have motivations in what actual reality is, because that's something you've talked about too, is like we don't have that 9 to 5, well, I mean like 24/7 survival, reality affirming existence. Like you were saying, you work so much now, and that keeps you in tune. Well, imagine being on a farm or hunting every day. That is so reality affirming. It's so real in your face. You're so connected to your food. You can't deny it. Now we're just like in this vacuum of leisure. We can start letting go of what reality's real signals are and start being motivated purely on our impulses, our emotions, and then we start creating a reality view based off of that. When in fact, reality doesn't give a fuck about your emotions. I mean, not to say that you shouldn't have them, but you get what I'm.
No, exactly. And like, well, here's the thing. I want to settle this sort of morality argument on this right now, because like you said, the morality is where what gets is when you talk about the emotional aspect of it, it's morality right away. People don't want to kill an animal or whatever it is, right? The thing is, we understand very clearly that there are some animals that have more capacity for experience of, you know, pain and pleasure and so on, and self-awareness and lucidity or whatever, right? And so, you know, I don't like to use this example because it's a little bit cheap, but I'm going to do it anyway. You know, like if you look at these people and you say, well, you know, do you want to stop lions from eating gazelles because that's a immoral thing?
Some of them do, man. Some of them think that they're raised that way, so that's how they.
Yeah, but let's put the kooks aside, right, and like really just look at the people who are, you know, having a problem with cognitive dissonance here.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, okay, well, you know, that's in the animal kingdom. You know, they don't, you know, that's how they function. They actually do need meat and all that kind of stuff. And also, you know, these animals don't know what they're doing. They don't have the capacity for morality in the same sense that we do, whereas we can do something about it, blah, 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 right? Well, that's the point, isn't it an immoral act to go against our own nature? What about our own nature? You know, I just don't like the fallacy that the guy at the top has to somehow, it's always that way, right? It's always that there's a kind of responsibility that's attached to whoever's at the top of the food chain. in any domain, right? Do you know what I mean? Whereas it's like, no, like, how do you get to the top of the food chain? How do you maintain the top of the food chain to begin with in order for you to do any good? Well, you need to, everything is selfish in that sense, right? Like, it's the primary sort of like act of any sentient being of this universe. It's just the parameters that we've been put in, right? You need to primarily look after you. So isn't that ultimately
you are you?
Yeah, and isn't that ultimately what makes it, morality in this at the end of the day is to take care of, do you know what I mean?
I would love to do a podcast with you again where we just start from this point because it's a huge topic and there's so many aspects to this. But I mean, I made a video about this and I took it from the environmental side of things. It's because it's like, what is really best for everyone, right? And if you leave ruminants alone in nature without a predator, then they tend to eat everything, destroy everything, and then starve themselves.
Yeah.
And we've never, like, it's only in man-made conditions that we've had situations where ruminants were not co-evolving with predators. And anyways, like one thing I always think about is like, well, what would we do if we just let all the cows go? What would happen? Well, first of all, we would need to, like, they wouldn't be able to survive except if we gave them like pasture lands forever. But
not just that, it would destroy the environment.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: these people, they usually overlap. It's not you know what I mean. Let's just say that we should not pretend that the same people who will believe in veganism are the same people who are environmentalists. They usually overlap, right? These people are the same people.
They think,
so it's kind of like
think that they're the same thing, but they're not.
No, but what I'm saying is, you know what I mean? It's like a Republican is going to be the kind of person who goes out hunting. You're not really going to see the far left liberal do that, right? So
there was an article that said vegans tend to be more to the left, carnivores more to the right. It's just a disgusting oversimplification of reality, and I just want to make a point that is so stupid.
It is, because I'm a left, more on the left than I am. But the point is, like, that's something that I never understood. It's kind of like a cognitive dissonance. It's like, how do you worm your way out of that argument? It's like, okay, so if we don't tinker with nature, right, we let it be as it is, because by virtue of us just existing, that will ruin the environment. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, so let's let the animals do what they want, and then they destroy the pastures. By the way, I learned all this from a big documentary in Quebec, from Montreal, I think, with my aunt, because she's an agriculturist. My aunt, so she's in it.
People who are actually involved in this shit, they all know this.
They all know this. And there's this guy, he's a famous farmer, huge, and he talks about it. It's very, very interesting stuff. Yeah. But natural farming. So yes, we want to get rid of these horrible practices that destroys the environment, but we need to return back to the same practices of natural farming, so as to better the environment. And there's another guy in Siberia or in Russia, and this had to, I think it's in one of the climate change documentaries of, I think it was DiCaprio's one anyway, or it could have been somewhere else where I got this, but this guy literally found the ingenious way to fix the permafrost melting in Siberia, which is really releasing a lot of water into the ocean.
They did the same thing with desertification in Africa.
Well, it's basically, we need to bring bison and, like, grazing animals there again. Right? Like, we need these animals, we need to farm them again. And it had to do with, like, I don't know, it was like this interesting guy. I can't get into it, but I'm just sort of telling you that, there seems to be where this community of veganism and all this kind of ideology, where they see the problem, we see the solution. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, well, how? Because and they don't really propose any solutions that are sustainable or even desirable. It's kind of like, no, let's just go completely ascetic. We don't care about what we desire. We desire ultimately morality and just whatever else. So it's like, let's put all of this aside. Let's put our happiness aside, our carnal happiness.
Yeah. It's pure pandering to emotion without any actual knowledge of how reality works. But I just want to play that scenario out. If we just let all the cows go and then we all went vegan, well, there's two issues there. Is that first of all, yeah, the cows would destroy everything and probably starve off. But then there would be wolves that would start breeding like crazy because they have so much extra food. There would be this like wolves fucking everywhere. They'd start attacking people too because there's so many of them. And then on the other side, because we're all going vegan, we'd have to destroy all the land that we could to turn them into monocrops to grow the food that we needed, because it would take all the land. So then we would just end up killing all the cows anyways, which we've done so many times for massive industry agriculture. They destroy entire ecosystems. I mean, what do you think they're doing with the Amazon forest? They just replaced it all with soy and corn crops.
Yeah, it'd be interesting what they would say, though. They might say something that's kind of contradictory, just a little bit to support their point. Kind of like, oh well, we would just kill off, we just release a certain amount, or kill off the ones that you've already raised in captivity, and then release a certain amount in the wild. It's like, okay, so
the ones that we kill off, at least.
Oh my God, it just doesn't make sense. Look, by virtue of us being humans, okay, we're unprecedented as far as we know on this planet, right? We're pretty much unprecedented. We are an anomaly. We are an intelligent species that has massive, if you want to look at it more from like the edge of the universe, right? We're technically kind of like a virus, right? We spread, we take up resources and all this kind of stuff. We don't have to be a virus, though. It doesn't have to be like a viral infection. It could be like antibodies as well. Do you know what I mean? So like, I think it's for sure that we're going to spread. We need to spread. We need to go to like colonize Mars and so on and so forth.
That's something we could take up in another episode.
Yeah, like, look, just by virtue of us being humans, right? Unless you do go super radical and say we need to kill off like 2/3 of the human population, blah blah blah, to return to these ideals that we're holding on to so strongly, right? Then, because that's how it starts. Right? It starts with all these little things, and even when you go through these little things and it doesn't work, you're like, well, we need to do this now, and then it goes on, and before you know it, there's a radicalism, right?
Yeah.
So let's say it gets to that point, it doesn't make sense. Obviously, you're negating humanity at some point. You have to admit that, yes, just by virtue of us existing on this planet, we derange the ecosystem. But we're also the answer to help the ecosystem. Do you know what I mean? That's how it works. We have no choice to do it like that, on and on. So I think it just ends the argument right there.
Yeah. Well, I think that comes down to a lot of their worldview. They think that we're unconsciously evil, and I think that's true. Most people, they live from, as I talked about, they live from the animalistic belief system, worldview. That it's all just they have no self-control. They're just animals. Everyone else is just animalistic. We're out of control. But like, I kind of want to fight for, the belief system, the worldview that, hey, maybe we can be self-controlling. That's the development of the prefrontal cortex. That's our evolution, is to become self-aware, realize what our place is, and do things right. And I think
I'm not so convinced that we're out of control. I think
no, not at all. I think it's only we're out of control because we believe we are.
Yeah, well, I think we're out of control specifically because of these ideologies.
Exactly.
Because we negate our own human nature. Now, if we were to say, okay, we are meat eaters, right? But we're also also intelligent, and we don't want to ruin the environment, or obviously
we want to hurt the least animals possible.
Yeah, I think like it's like honor your humanity in an intelligent way. Like, so be natural, eat the food that you need to eat, do the things you need to do, but do it in the proper way, and that's it. And that fixes the problem of us being out of control. It's not. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like if you negate something, you say, okay, we're gonna have to stop doing this because it's bad, and then we're out of control. No, you're not out of control because we have a negative effect. It doesn't work that way, right? We have a negative effect because Um, uh, not because our biological cells are out of control. It's because of our intellect is out of control. So I'll give you an example to make sense out of this. If I'm a CEO and I want to make more money, I'm going to do something that's bad for the environment, that's bad for the animals that are in my farming system, whatever, right? Morally speaking. And so that's the out of control part. I want to make more money. I want to make more profit up here, right? But if I'm honoring as a human being, not as CEO of a farm, sort of complex, then I want to honor, my body and my culture and do you know what I mean? And my community by sustainable farming. And so the very conservativeness of honoring and returning to your natural roots and to do what you do as a human being, as a biological human being. That because evolution is smarter than we are, man. Like millions of years designed for us to be this way. I do think that the brain is part of it. Just because we're an anomaly and that we have so much impact on the environment and that we've dominated the planet, I don't think that's outside of evolution's sort of like system. It doesn't have to be.
Part of it's like
part of it. It's part of it.
It's like you have to get sick a few times as a kid to develop a good immune system.
Exactly. So I think it's just a phase where we need to, that we need to deal with this out of controlness by being who we are.
We have to understand it and act on that understanding. Yeah, absolutely. And it's not to say that we have to go back to like zero technology or anything. No, we can keep progressing, but it's about that balance, right? It's if we just go off into, and another point I want to make too is, I mean, look at herbivores versus carnivores. Carnivores reproduce less. They're more controlled and more, how do I say, regulated about their reproduction. Herbivores, they just fuck like crazy and they just pop out babies. And I hate to say it, but it's just, I'm not going to say that there's a study about vegans that have more kids or anything, but if you think about it, from what we know, higher inflammation causes more fight or flight mode in the body. When you have more of that, then you're more impulsive. Then you fuck more probably without protection. I mean, increases the chance. All to say, the numbers add up. And I think if we're more carnivore and we live that way of life with the environment and we do things properly, then we tend to be happier. We're more satisfied. We can be calmer. We can enjoy what we have more and stop reproducing so fucking much. And then our population should be able to even out naturally instead of, giving yourselves vasectomies and like ending up starting a genocide of some kind against one political group or another. I don't know, but I'm seeing a lot of that. There's literally this guy, Dr. Greger. He's like one of the big vegan guys. I think he's not even a practicing doctor, but he went through med school. But he actually encourages his followers to get vasectomies.
That's strange. Yeah. I think we need to confirm that. We need to go and see if it's true. If there's a higher rate of childbirth in vegans.
Well, I mean, how do you do that kind of a study? But I mean, I like to just look at it in terms of what the animals do. What do animals that consume more plants do, and what happens to the body when you're in more of a state of inflammation and fight or flight? You tend to be more impulsive and look for more stimulation, meaning more food, more sex, and sometimes even, escape and having a child. Some people use children as a way to validate themselves and satisfy that constant urge for something. But just a thought. I'm not saying that that's any real science, but
no. I'm saying we need to make that argument. For it to be strong, we would have to actually see a sort of trend there. But because I equivocate it to something like this, if you know, coming from the other side of the gate, let's say I'm a carnivore and I make this sort of argument. I say, well, you know, it's natural in nature for living beings to get what they can, like eat what they can, based on the environment, based on their design, whatever, right? So like if you look at, I think it's the Brontosaurus or whatever, the big dinosaur that has a big long neck. It's like fucking 200 feet high type, you know, and all it eats is like plants and shit. Because it doesn't need, it's so big, it's, you know, it doesn't need to defend itself. And obviously the shit that's around is vegetation. So, you know,
It
like,
still got attacked. I mean, the carnivores were like, fuck yeah, when they look
yeah,
at it.
big meat, yeah. But the point is, like, you can use that argument and say, yeah, okay, but we're human beings, we dominate the planet, we can still find an alternative or whatever. You know, that's the argument that goes against it. So it's not usually a strong enough argument. That whole, like, just, you know, nature thing. If like I said, I think if we don't look at it straight up in terms of like what it does to your like how it's part of just biology or your natural rhythms as a human being, as a primate, you know, you got to attack it on the intellectual level a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what I have just explained, right? Which is that, you know, if we return to our natural states of being, which is to be physically active, like, you know, 30, 40 years ago, you told someone I'm going jogging, they'd be like, what the fuck is jogging? And why? You know, I think, you know, I don't know how long jogging's been around, but anyway, at some point in time, they're like, nobody does physical exercise without a reason, without a purpose, other than to be healthy. That's dumb, right? Like, you know, it's like to go and like go to the gym just to stay healthy. That doesn't make sense at some point. So we need to return to something more natural. I would even argue that point as well. Like, you know, maybe we shouldn't go to the gyms. Maybe we should do activities. You know, if you were to replace all your physical activity that you do at the fucking gym to stay healthy, right? Because that's with the explicit intention of being healthy. That's why you go to the gym, right? Usually, or to like, you know, impress chicks or look good or whatever. You can do the same, get the same physical activity, getting the same results by doing something that's actually useful, that has more, you know, natural potential, if you will.
Yeah.
Right, like playing a sport, or, you know,
or actually work on your food production, which is, you know, like no one wants to be a farmer anymore because I don't know, everyone wants to be the next big political voice or develop artificial intelligence so that we can, I don't know, reach new heights. When, man, like when, in my opinion, when I started eating carnivore, I'm just satisfied. As long as I get my meat, I'm really happy. And that's why I'm doing this, is so that I get to continue eating my meat and so that some political movement doesn't come and tax everything. But we're so driven to escape ourselves, to go off into space. Not that I have an issue with going off into space, but like, it's like we're rushing. And then we make up these excuses like, oh, well, we have to escape the world because we're destroying it. Well, you're destroying it because you're so driven to get the fuck out of here in the first place. It's this evil loop. And every time we develop new technologies, it comes with its own bullshit. I mean, yeah, it has an advantage, but like, we have to stop for a second. And I know it's almost impossible to get the world to stop and actually enjoy itself for a second and take it slow and be like, hey, what do we actually want? Where are we actually going with this shit? Is what we're doing not, is it actually beneficial in as many ways as possible, or are we more destroying ourselves trying to get there without even knowing where we're going?
Yeah.
When in fact, if in my opinion, if you're living in nature, if you're getting a lot of sunlight, you're moving a lot, you're working and you're producing your own food, you see where your food is coming from, you're connected to it. It's that like beautiful loop. Then you don't give a shit about most of that stuff nearly as much. I mean, sure, you do need some community and like sometimes some intellectual stimulation of some kind, but it reduces enormously. And I don't know if that's possible for the world, but Hey, why not? Why don't we try?
Yeah, but I mean, like that's. I think this is a good segue into a sort of ending statement. But like, I told you about that. I forget who said this. I heard it somewhere, but it's kind of funny. He said that the that if you're young and if you're when you're if you have any heart when you're young, you'll typically be liberal, and if you have any brain when you're older, you'll be more conservative. um, and so as liberal and progressive as we are in other ventures, as much as anybody who's listening to this conversation right now probably thinks the exact opposite because we're talking like far right wingers or whatever, but like we're millennials, dude. Like we actually are pretty progressive. We you and I know that we have liberal values as well, but like I think ultimately speaking, you need to be conservative, and it's like progress is inevitable. It's inevitable, right? So I think progress, and this is why I'm more conservative now than I was before I started becoming a little bit more political, before I needed to give a shit. And I realized that progress is secondary, and it's secondary because it's inevitable. Because it's inevitable because we're moving forward, the law of the universe of time. We have no choice for things to make progress, in a sense, or the opposite if you count entropy or however you want to look at it. The point is, progression is inevitable. Therefore, what you need to prioritize is conservatism, right? You need to be able to conserve your values and to take your time with the progress. It's like
In that way, yeah.
yeah, like nobody argues that we want to make things better. Of course, we want to make things better. Of course, we want to make progress. Everybody wants that. That's not the issue. The issue is how are you going to do it in an intelligent way so that you're not fucking things up. You're going to have to be more conservative. And so I think it makes a great case for when we got there at the end there, we were talking about like other stuff that had a little bit, it's relevant, but we're talking about like, leaving the planet and all this kind of stuff. But I think generally speaking, I think we make a good case when it comes to diet and health and all these things to say slow down. You know what I mean? Like you can't radically change our culture and say, okay, no more meat, just like that. You know what I mean? Because it is a radical thing, and I don't even think it has to do with conservatism. I'm not making the statement that it's progressive to wean ourselves off of meat and then become a civilization that never eats meat ever again. No, what I'm saying is, I think this has gone even too far to the point where it's been so progressive. Like just in French, we would say "parti en part," right? It's just basically gone like chicken with its head cut off. It's an appropriate sort of pun or whatever. And so like we've gotten to the point where we've negated our humanity, negated our very natural state of like carnivore.
Yeah. Well, I see what you mean. It's because I guess you could say this when we talk about right versus left and that kind of stuff, it gets icky because things get packaged together, right? And what I'd like to see it more as is, well, take the best of each and leave the rest. But you can see the right as looking into the past and wanting the past, and then the left looking into the future and desperately wanting the future. But what if we looked at it this way? Hey, we developed traditions and we evolved for a reason. Maybe we along the line took on some habits and that weren't so great. But if we keep looking back and looking at the traditions that really had value, like raising animals properly and taking care of the land and just cultural values, community values, well, that's really good shit. And we can't let that go so quickly. But yeah, let's have that as a base. And then as we move along, look at some of our assumptions. And then this comes back to self-awareness. It's look at our assumptions and see what works and what doesn't, and experiment little by little. Don't get like, oh, this tradition doesn't make sense, so like we have to eradicate it from the world. No, try without it for a little while. See if suddenly something comes up. Maybe it was necessary for some reason. Maybe it is part of something that we picked up because that's inbuilt in reality. It's necessary. And then if nothing happens and things get better, then I mean, this is basically the scientific method. It's tweak and experiment constantly, but don't rush. It's almost like a spiritual thing. It's how do you approach the unknown, is with interest, but don't rush in. Don't do it with fear and like anger. Don't rush at it with a weapon and screaming. No, take it.
Evolution gave us a brain so that we don't do that anymore, right? So we can live and survive, being capable of not doing that, so that we can, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, if over millions of years we evolved to only, you know, sustain our bodies by breathing in air and like nutrients straight out of the air, you know what I mean? Or like licking a rock and it gives you all the nutrients, the chemical.
A lot of animals do that.
Yeah, but the point is, you know, as much as we're gonna have the ability to fuck with our genetics and that kind of stuff, and like tamper with our evolution process, the fact of the matter is, you know, this is the way we are. This is the way we've always been. This is the way, you know, reality has dictated we have to be, and so we need to, like you said, you know, we need to go about it a little bit more slow and using our heads, you know, not be emotional about it.
And I can understand why people think that the way we are is so bad, but I think it's more because we don't understand ourselves and we haven't really stepped into the attitude of hey, we're not just animals. We're animals and a lot more. We have a choice. We can be conscious and actually change our impulses, change our mechanisms, change our reactivity. And as soon as people start realizing that, you start to actually appreciate humanity a little bit. Like we're beautiful, we're incredible creatures. It's kind of mind-blowing just how multidimensional we are. We get to use reality as a biofeedback loop and try things out all the time and see where we're going and experiment and try to figure out what is good, what is better, what is worse, I mean, unfortunately, it's part of our evolution. Developing this prefrontal cortex is becoming aware of that awareness.
Yeah.
I think way back, that's sort of like, you know, the Garden of Eden. We didn't know good or bad. We didn't even think about things. We just did, and we were part of nature, very much so. And then we started waking up. Not to be biblical, but you know, it's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And now we're at a crisis point in that evolution where we're like, oh wait, are we actually conscious? I think that's actually a big topic with like Sam Harris and stuff like that. Do we actually have any free will or anything like that? Do we have any responsibility? And I say we do. I mean, as strange as it may sound, I think most of our culture is very materialistic, reductionist, and says there's no free will. It's all deterministic. It's all just chemicals going through the process. But no, I think evolution has gotten to a point, or I mean, maybe we've been this way for a long time, but all to say, us as humans, we have the option to stop that and do better.
Yeah.
Rise above our programming. Become aware of the programming and rise above it.
Yeah. But it sounds like you're making a case for the other team in the sense there. Rise above the programming, like, you know, we can, you know, not eat meat. Look, that's a good case too, though. I mean, we could if we really wanted to, but we don't want to, and that's the point. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do. So fuck y'all.
No, but what I'm saying is that we don't want to stop eating meat.
Oh, well, yeah. No, of course. That's not what I'm saying. I think that's part of the confusion.
That's another thing we should talk about is basically that if we could and if we can, These are two different things.
Yeah.
Literally get off of meat and like thrive and be good and whatever, right? Does that make it so that we should?
Well,
No. I think it's something that you have to think about. They'll be like, okay, like how do you weigh those out? Okay, well the morality goes up because of it. That would be the argument. But what are you taking away from life? Do you know what I mean? What are you taking away from happiness? What are you taking away from our nature? What are you taking away from? There's all these different questions. It's like,
that's true.
okay, let's make it so that people don't have to defecate anymore. Like, let's just fuck with our, we could do it. Let's say we had the technology to change our bodies so that we didn't have to take shit anymore, right?
But that's the thing. We don't know what the unintended consequences are. When I say become conscious and do better, I kind of mean, to a certain degree, go back to what we were, but what we actually are. Not apes, but humans. And and that brings up the other thing is, like, even if we could just eat plants and thrive, maybe some people can, I don't know, but as far as I can tell, it doesn't seem to be the case long term. Even if we could.
Like, it's closing now, so
oh shit. Okay, I'll finish up and then we'll say bye. But yeah, even if we could, then it brings up the whole environmental issues that I talked about before. What do we do eating just plants? We just leave all the cows to graze? Well, no, we have to use all the land that we can to grow the food that we need to eat. So you have to look at it large scale. There's a new pill now to block gluten intolerance, so that people who have gluten intolerance can start eating gluten again. But when I see that, I think to myself, I think gluten intolerance is kind of here to tell us, you guys are fucking up the environment with this grain. That's the whole point. If we keep blocking the symptoms, we're not getting to the root of the cause, which is actually a socio-political issue, not just what we're putting in our faces individually. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, that makes sense. See, that's something we should talk about as well next time. That's a very good point, right? Like the unintended consequences. What happens when you do switch to that kind of radical diet? Like that's like, that's the thing. I think we've all been swept up in this sort of outcry of morality, all this stuff. It's like, whoa, wait. At what cost? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And what are the dangers? We don't know. So it may not even be a justification. Although I think all the points we make are great points. But I think another one to make, which is super important, is that it's like, whoa, this may not even be in our realm of decisions.
Yeah.
Maybe we can't
We're playing God, man.
So anyway, man, that's a great way to end it. I gotta head out. Dude, it's been great to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's do it again, man.
Yeah, I'm down.
Okay.
Like I said, I'm an hour ahead of you, I think. So
really?
I'm off.
Okay.
I'm off at 5 p.m. So I'm off at 4 for you.
It's just about 8 o'clock, man. Here.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I'm off usually at 4 for you.
All right, man.
So hit me up around 6 p.m. any night, and I'll be at the cafe, and then we can talk.
Awesome, dude. Yeah,
all right, bro.
Good to see you again.
See you too, bro. Peace.
Peace.